Most people don't realize that empathy can be faked. The words can sound perfect, the facial expressions can look sincere, the timing can feel supportive, and yet something underneath feels slightly off. Psychology explains why fake empathy is so powerful and so difficult to detect. It mimics care without requiring emotional investment. It creates the illusion of understanding while protecting the speaker from vulnerability. By the end of this exploration, you will understand why fake empathy exists, how it works in the brain, and how to recognize it in everyday life. Empathy, in its genuine form, involves emotional resonance. When someone shares pain, certain neural networks activate in the listener. Mirror neuron systems respond. The anterior insula and anterior cingulate cortex light up, allowing us to feel a version of another person's emotional state. Real empathy is not just cognitive, it is visceral. Fake empathy operates differently. It relies more on cognitive simulation than emotional resonance. The person observes your emotion, predicts what a caring response should sound like, and delivers it convincingly, but internally, they remain detached. The distinction is subtle. Real empathy feels warm and grounded. Fake empathy often feels polished and strategic. Why would someone fake empathy? The answer is often simple. Empathy builds trust. Trust builds influence. In social environments, appearing compassionate increases likability and authority. At work, it can enhance leadership image. In relationships, it can deepen attachment. In some cases, fake empathy is a social skill used to avoid conflict. A person may not truly feel your frustration, but they know that acknowledging it keeps the peace. It becomes a tool for social smoothness rather than connection. Pause for a moment. Have you ever left a conversation feeling heard on the surface, yet strangely unseen at the core? That emotional aftertaste is often the clue. There is also a self-protective motive. Genuine empathy requires openness. It requires allowing another person's distress to affect you. For individuals uncomfortable with vulnerability, emotional detachment feels safer, so they perform empathy instead of experiencing it. Performance requires observation. These individuals are often highly perceptive. They read tone, posture, and timing well. They know when to nod, when to soften their voice, when to say, "That must have been hard." But here is the surprising insight. The more scripted the empathy sounds, the more likely it is cognitive rather than emotional. Real empathy is sometimes imperfect. It may include pauses. It may include uncertainty. It may involve saying, "I don't fully understand, but I want to." That humility signals authenticity. Fake empathy, by contrast, often centers the speaker subtly. The response may shift from your experience to their wisdom. It may turn into advice too quickly. It may redirect attention toward how they handled something similar. This is where manipulation can quietly enter. When empathy is used strategically, it creates psychological leverage. If you believe someone deeply understands you, you are more likely to trust them, open up further, and lower your guard. In romantic relationships, fake empathy can accelerate intimacy. Someone listens intensely, reflects your emotions back perfectly, and mirrors your values. You feel deeply connected. But over time, consistency fades. The emotional depth does not sustain. Have you ever felt someone got you quickly, only to later realize they did not truly know you at all? In professional settings, fake empathy can enhance authority. A leader may express concern during team stress, but fail to follow through with meaningful change. The words soothe, but the actions remain unchanged. Empathy without aligned behavior is performance. Another layer involves social desirability. Modern culture rewards emotional intelligence. Being seen as compassionate carries status. Some individuals internalize the language of empathy without developing the emotional capacity behind it. They learn the vocabulary before they learn the feeling. Neuroscience suggests that genuine empathy activates emotional processing regions alongside regulatory circuits. Fake empathy relies more heavily on executive function and impression management. It is calculated rather than absorbed. This does not mean the person is malicious. Sometimes they simply lack emotional depth. Sometimes they were raised in environments where emotions were discussed intellectually but not felt openly. Reflect on this question. When someone responds to your vulnerability, do they sit with your emotion or do they move to fix it quickly? Urgency often signals discomfort. There's also a power dynamic involved. If someone appears endlessly understanding, they may gain moral authority in the relationship. You begin to see them as emotionally superior. Over time, this imbalance can reduce your confidence in your own perceptions. Fake empathy can subtly silence you. Consider how often the empathic words are followed by subtle shifts in accountability. I understand why you feel that way, but that "but" can erase the validation that came before it. Real empathy does not immediately reposition blame. It creates space first. Another surprising truth is that fake empathy can feel addictive. When someone mirrors you perfectly, it stimulates the brain's reward system. You feel validated and special. The intensity of being understood can overshadow the lack of depth beneath it. Intensity is not always authenticity. In friendships, fake empathy might show up as performative concern in public, but emotional absence in private. In dating, it may appear as deep late-night conversations that never translate into consistent support. In families, it may sound like rehearsed compassion without behavioral change. The body often detects inconsistency before the mind does. Subtle tension, slight confusion, a sense that something is misaligned. Trust that signal. It is important to distinguish fake empathy from emotional fatigue. Sometimes people genuinely care but lack capacity in the moment. Fake empathy is patterned and strategic. Emotional fatigue is situational and usually accompanied by honesty. If someone says, "I care about you, but I'm overwhelmed right now," that transparency reflects sincerity. Fake empathy rarely admits limitation. Why does this matter? Because empathy builds psychological safety. When that safety is manufactured rather than real, relationships become unstable. You may share more than is safe. You may rely on support that never truly existed. Awareness restores balance. When you begin to notice the difference, you can slow down emotional investment. You can observe whether actions align with words. You can test consistency over time rather than trusting immediate resonance. Ask yourself quietly, do I feel emotionally nourished after conversations with this person, or do I feel subtly drained? Energy often reveals authenticity. The dark truth about fake empathy is not that it exists, it's that it can look indistinguishable from the real thing at first glance. But depth reveals itself through patience. Genuine empathy withstands disagreement. It survives conflict. It persists even when it is inconvenient. It is not selective or strategic. Fake empathy often fades when it no longer serves a purpose. At its core, empathy is about shared humanity. It requires humility. It requires listening without an agenda. It requires tolerating another person's discomfort without trying to control it. When empathy becomes performance, connection becomes fragile. This awareness is not meant to create suspicion toward everyone around you. It's meant to sharpen discernment. Healthy relationships are built on emotional consistency, not emotional display. Notice patterns, notice follow-through, notice whether vulnerability flows both ways. If this reflection resonates, consider where you may have accepted surface-level understanding as depth. Consider where you might be performing empathy out of habit or fear. Growth does not require perfection. It requires honesty. Empathy, when real, feels grounding. It feels steady. It feels safe. And when you experience it genuinely, you'll recognize the difference immediately. Share your thoughts below. Reflect on the kind of empathy you want to give and receive, and continue exploring the psychology behind everyday behavior, because understanding it protects your emotional world without closing it off.